Okay, today we'll be doing your review for your quiz tomorrow. So we've learned how to factor and to solve by factoring, but we're just going to put it all together so we get everything straightened out. So the first thing, find the greatest common factor of the monomials. So this was one of the first things we did, where we listed out all of the factors. So we got it down to the prime factorization. So remember 24, we can do a factor tree that breaks down into 6 times 4. 6 is 2 times 3. 4 is 2 times 2. So this is 2 times 2 times 2 times 3. We have 2 x's, 3 y's, and 7 z's. Then 40 xy to the third z squared. 40, you can break that down, so 4 times 10, 4 is 2 times 2, 10 is 2 times 5. So this, we have 2 times 2 times 2 times 5. There's 1x, 3 y's, and 2 z's. So if you notice, there are 3 2's in common, an x in common, 3 y's in common, and 2 z's in common. So I have 3 2's, 1 x, 3 y's, and 2 z's, which comes out to be 8xy to the third z squared. Now, if you can do this without writing all of the factors down, you totally can if you can do it in your head. Right? But I'm just showing you how we did it to begin with. So the next 3 examples, it just says to factor by taking out a greatest common factor. So this is, remember, taking out everything you can, and then in parentheses, writing out what's left. So if I look at the numbers 7, 9, and 11, there's nothing that they're divisible by besides 1. X's, I can't take out an x because the middle term doesn't have any. But if I look y's, they all have at least 1. So I can take out the y, and then remember I put what's left. So there were 3 terms, so there's got to be 3 terms in the parentheses. So if I take out the y from the first term, I have 7x left. If I take out the y from the second term, I just have a 9. And if I take out the y from the third term, I have 11xy. And that's all I'm doing. So when it just says factor by taking out a greatest common factor, you don't have to do the box method. Now the next one, 4, 6, and 8, they're both divisible by 2. But since the leading term has a negative sign, I have to take out a negative 2. M's, here there's 5, here there's 2, here there's 1, so I can take out 1m. The n's, 7, 5, and 4, so I can take out 4 of them. So then I go through, there's 3 terms. Negative 4 divided by negative 2 is positive 2. Remember, we divide the numbers to see what's left inside. The m's, if I take 1 away, I still have 4 left. The n's, if I take 4 away, I still have 3 left. Now remember, when we take out a negative, we're essentially just switching the signs inside. So 6 divided by negative 2 is negative 3. That's why I'm going to put the minus there. So negative 3 m squared, so I take 1 away. N to the 5th, I take 4 away. Then here, negative 8 divided by negative 2 is positive 4. So remember, it's basically like I'm just switching these signs. So I have the 4. I take out an m and 4n, so there's no variables left inside. Now this one, 55, 40, and 25, they're all divisible by 5. I can take out no x's because this doesn't have an x, but I can take out one y. So 55 divided by 5 is 11. I have x squared, and there's no y's left. 40 divided by 5 is 8, so I have minus 8. I take out a y, so I have 2 left. 25 divided by 5 is 5, so I have minus 5, and I'm taking out 1y, so I have 1y left. So that's greatest common factor. The next thing we learned how to do was to factor completely. And remember, you still look for a greatest common factor first, but then after that you do the box method. So if it says factor completely, you not only need to do the GCF, but then you need to do the box. So if I look at 5, there's no GCF, but there are 4 terms, so this is ready for the box. So I have 3x to the third, negative 12x squared y, 2xy, and negative 8y squared. So horizontally, 3 and 12, they're both divisible by 3. X cubed and x squared, so they have 2 x's in common. Horizontally here, they're both divisible by 2, and they both have 1y. Well, this one has 2, but they have 1y in common. Vertically, number-wise, I can only take out a 1, but I can take out an x. Vertically here, I have to take out a negative because the first number I'm looking at is negative. But these are both divisible by 4, and they both have 1y in common. So I have 3x squared plus 2y times x minus 4y. So I factored. So 6, there's no greatest common factor besides 1, so I don't have to do the first step. I'm ready for the box because there's 4 terms. X cubed, 7x squared, 3x, and 21. Horizontally, I can take out an x squared and a 3. Vertically, an x and a 7. So I have x squared plus 3, x plus 7. So now, 7. This one doesn't have 4 terms, it has 3 terms, right? But its process is still the same. I look, this one does have a GCF. The entire thing is divisible by 3. So if I take out a 3, 3 divided by 3 is 1, so I have 1x squared. 33 divided by 3 is 11, so 11x. 54 divided by 3 is 18. Now, in order to do the box, right, I need 4 terms, and this only has 3. So remember what we do with what's left inside the parentheses. I find 2 terms that are going to multiply to 18. So 1 times 18 is 18. And those same 2 terms, when you add them together, you get 11. So that would be 9 times 2. 9 times 2 is 18. 9 plus 2 is 11. So that's what I'm splitting that middle term into to make it 4. So my first term is the x squared. My middle term splits into 9x and 2x. And my last term is 18. So horizontally, I can take out an x and a 2. Vertically, an x and a 9. So remember, I took out the 3 originally, so that has to be part of my answer. That goes out in front. And then I have x plus 2, x plus 9. So 8, 3 terms. This one doesn't have a greatest common factor besides 1. So if I look, my outside 2 terms, 1 times negative 14 is negative 14. I need to find something that multiplies to negative 14 and adds to positive 13. Now, a lot of times people get lost with these. But look, they're 1 away. That's a hint that it's the number times 1. If I use 14 and 1, and I make the 1 a negative, 14 times negative 1 is negative 14. 14 plus negative 1 is 13. So I'm ready for the box. I have x squared. My middle term split into 14x and negative 1x. And my last term is negative 14. Horizontally, I can take out an x and a negative 1. Vertically, an x and a positive 14, because the leading number is positive. So I have x minus 1, x plus 14. Here, 6, 2, and 20 are all divisible by 2. So I take the GCF out first. So I have 3x squared minus x minus 10. 3 times negative 10 is negative 30. I need to find something that multiplies to negative 30 and adds to negative 1. So 5 and 6 would be good. The 6 would need to be negative to make it a negative 1. So I make the box. I have 3x squared, 5x, negative 6x, and negative 10. Horizontally, you can take out an x and a negative 2. Vertically, a 3x and a 5. The 2 that I took out originally has to go out in front. And I have x minus 2, 3x plus 5. Okay, and 10, 4 times negative 15 is negative 60. I need to find something that multiplies to negative 60 and adds to negative 4. So that would be negative 10 times positive 6. So I make the box. I put 4x squared first. My middle term splits into negative 10x, positive 6x, and my last term is negative 15. Horizontally, I can take out a 2x, right? 4 and 10 are both divisible by 2. Here, a 3, vertically a 2x, and vertically here a negative 5. So I have 2x plus 3, 2x minus 5. So after we learn to factor, then we learn to solve. Now if you look at 11, these already has parentheses, and the parentheses there's no exponent, so this is already factored. So once it's in factored form, remember we set both of our factors equal to 0, and we solve. So this I divide by 2, I get x equals 0. This I add 6, I get x equals 6. Now 12. You guys tend to not know how to do these problems. Remember, just like factoring, your first step is to take out a GCF. In this problem, there is a GCF. You can take out an x. If I do that, I'm left with x minus 4. So now it's in factored form already. It's just like number 11. I set both of my factors equal to 0, and I solve. This is already solved. This one I add 4, and I get x equals 4. So 2 more. This one, it's got 3 terms. There's no GCF. There's 3 terms and there's no GCF, so I do the box method. I need to find something that multiplies to negative 30 and adds to negative 7. So that's negative 10 and positive 3. I make the box just like I always do factoring. I get x squared, negative 10x, 3x, and negative 30. Horizontally, I can take out an x and a 3. Vertically, an x and a negative 10. So I have x plus 3, x minus 10 equals 0. So remember then we set each factor equal to 0. And we solve. This one I minus 3. So I get x equals negative 3. This one I add 10. So I get x equals 10. Now this one isn't ready because it's not set equal to 0, so I have to add the 15 first. So I get 4x squared minus 23x plus 15 equals 0. There's no GCF besides 1, so I'm finding something that multiplies to 60 and adds to negative 23. So think about it, right? Both my numbers have to be negative to make my product a positive number. Negative 20 and negative 3. So I make the box. I have 4x squared, negative 20x, negative 3x, and positive 15. Horizontally, I'm going to take out a 4x and a negative 3. Vertically, an x and a negative 5. So I have 4x minus 3 and x minus 5 equals 0. So I set both of my factors equal to 0, and I solve. Here I have to add 3 first, and then divide by 4. So I get x equals 3/4. This one I just have to add 5. So I get x equals 5. Then lastly, here's 2 word problems. The concept is still the same for these, you just have to think a little bit. So we're looking at a rectangle, and we're dealing with area. So I know area is length times width. It doesn't tell me anything about the length and width, but it does tell me that the area is 35. But it tells me that the width is 16 feet less than 3 times the length. I can write this as an equation. The width is 16 feet less than 3 times the length. The only thing I have to remember to do is less than means flip it around. So my width is 3L minus 16. So since I know that the width is 3L minus 16, what I want to do is I want to use that for my equation. Now I can't solve an equation that's got 2 variables, right? I need it to only have 1. So what I can do is I can replace the W with 3L minus 16. This is kind of like what we learned last semester with solving systems. Okay, it's just like that. So what I would do is basically do the length times the width, but I'm replacing the width with 3L minus 16. I don't know what's going on there, sorry. So then from there, since I know that the area is 35, I'm going to set that equal to 35. Now, the problem is you would think this is in factored form, but remember it needs to equal 0, and right now it equals 35. So what I'm going to have to do is distribute this. I have 3L squared minus 16L. And now I need to move the 35 over. So I'm going to subtract 35. So I have 3L squared minus 16L minus 35 equals 0. Now that this is set equal to 0, now I can go ahead and factor it. There's no GCF, so I need to find something that multiplies to whatever 3 times negative 35 is, and that's negative 105, and adds to negative 16. Now that is negative 21 and positive 5. So I make the box. I have 3L squared, negative 21L, 5L, and negative 35. So I take out GCF. Horizontally, I can take out a 3L and a 5. Vertically, an L and a negative 7. They're both divisible by 7. Okay? So I have 3L plus 5 times L minus 7 equals 0. So I set them both equal to 0, so I can solve. This one I would subtract 5 and divide by 3, so it's negative 5/3. This one I just have to add 7. Now this is the length. It doesn't make sense. We can never have negative length. So this one doesn't make sense, but this does. So if I know that my length is 7 feet, I can find my width because it says the dimensions by plugging in 7 for L into this equation. So 3 times 7 minus 16, that's 21 minus 16, which is 5. So my width is 5 feet. Oh, that was a bad squaring around the answer. So that's number 15. Now number 16, this is a new formula, but it's a vertical motion model. And I'm going to tell you the H stands for the ending height. The V stands for the velocity. The H sub O stands for the starting height. And the T stands for the time. So we're basically, all we're going to do is we're going to read this and figure out what we have and what we need to find. So it says a gymnast dismounts the uneven parallel bars at a height of 8 feet. So since she's dismounting at a height of 8 feet, that's her starting height. So I know that this is 8. It says an initial upward velocity of 8 feet per second. The reason why they're telling me upward is to tell me that it's positive velocity. So this is 8 feet per second. How long does it take for her feet to reach ground level? So since they're asking me how long, my time is unknown, and it's telling me her feet to reach ground level. Ground level, right, is at 0. So my ending height is 0 feet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this equation and I'm going to fill in what I have. So I have the H, that's 0. I have the velocity, that's 8. And I have the initial height, that's also 8. So now, this isn't a word problem anymore. It's exactly what we've done. We're going to solve the quadratic equation by factoring. If you notice, this has a GCF. They're all divisible by 8. Since there's a negative in front, I need to take out a negative 8. So negative 16 divided by negative 8 is positive 2. 8 divided by negative 8 is negative 1. 8 divided by negative 8 is negative 1. So now I'm ready to factor, so I'm going to use the box. I need to find something that multiplies to negative 2 and adds to negative 1. So negative 2 plus 1, right, would give me negative 1. Negative 2 times 1 gives me negative 2. So I make the box. I have 2t squared, negative 2t, 1t, and negative 1. So these two, remember, come from splitting the middle. Horizontally, I can take out a 2t and a positive 1. Vertically, I can take out a 1t and a negative 1. So I have the negative 8 that I took out, the 2t plus 1, and the t minus 1. Now I set my factors equal to 0. Now negative 8 equals 0, I can't solve that, and that's not a true statement, so that goes away. This one I minus 1 and divide by 2. So I get negative 1/2. Here I add 1. Now we are talking in context, and we're talking about time. So this is in seconds, how long it takes her. It doesn't make sense to take negative half of a second, right? We don't use negatives with time. So this is what makes sense. So it's going to take her 1 second to reach the ground from her dismount. All right, that is your review for your quiz tomorrow. Right? If you need any help, make sure you send me an email. But your homework is the pink packet to do the review.